Brilliant. Stevie, do you and Janet want to take the con? Are you going to share from your end?
I can have a go.
We are, yeah.
Can we all see it? That's the question.
Yes, we can.
I see that.
Perfect. Okay, so my name's Seymour, and I'm joined by my colleague Janet Garner, and we facilitate service use and care engagement at the University of Central Lancashire. And historically, that means that we recruit, train, and support members of the public to share from their own experiences, usually in the classroom as well. So obviously, we were presented with a bit of a problem, so we're going to talk to you a little bit about our digital approach to public engagement and how kind of our practice has changed. We're going to make this wakelet available to you after this anyway. There's more information about our department and what we do here. But I think, Janet, you're going to start us off, aren't you, about being creative?
Yeah, and just before I start, I'm just going to apologise because they may have started drilling again next door to me. So I may have to hand over to Stevie. Okay. So as Stevie said, we co-facilitate service user and carer involvement in the classroom. But really, when I was reflecting on this idea of creativity during quarantine, I just wanted to reflect on the last 3 months and on our journey, you know, over that period. So I've seen a lot on Twitter and different blogs about actually comparing it to the 7 stages of grief, the 7 stages of lockdown, you know, that emotional roller coaster that we've all been on. So at the beginning of this journey, you know, we were all hanging out in our cosy offices, drinking coffee and eating biscuits with our patient volunteers and nipping in and out of classrooms. And it was quite a lonely journey, packing up and moving out and wondering what our patient volunteers were going to do for the next however many months, really. So during that period, we were very lucky in that we'd already created last summer a digital resource library. So we'd captured people's stories on film and we'd captured written case studies. So we had that library for our teaching staff to use if they wanted and to embed in Blackboard or Moodle or whatever program they were using. So really we thought actually we could actually sit here and be furloughed, I guess, and not see and wave goodbye to our volunteers for 3 months. But I think once we'd all settled down and we'd got ourselves back together after a couple of weeks, we hit pragmatic mode and started to get moving again and think, well, actually, what can we do? So we got our service users onto Microsoft Teams. We started having social meetings on there, but also conducting our teaching and learning sessions on there as well. And then we've become a little bit more creative as the weeks have gone on. So we are supported by a really dedicated team here at UCLan and our learning and information service. So we've been able to utilise a lot of different software packages to kind of promote the service user and carer voice through that in things like Flipgrid, as I say, Microsoft Teams, Padlet as well, which we'll show you in a minute, and lots of other variations on that as well. So I think next slide, Steve.
So I think that what myself and Janet kind of did within the first week is we realised that we needed to have a very clear plan to be able to communicate to our public members, but also to staff that were coming to us like, I've got all these sessions booked and obviously what do we do now? And so we came up with kind of 3 main approaches that we wanted to develop. One a bit about utilising this resource library, which had pre-recorded videos, audio, written case studies that looks a little bit like this to our staff members that can access it. But it's very 2-dimensional. These students can't interact with it. It is very much they receive information. The second was, like Janet said, about getting our volunteers set up onto and engaging with Microsoft Teams, but also things like Adobe Connect, Zoom and other pieces of software that different people utilise. And obviously due to GDPR and the issues around confidentiality, we wanted to make sure that our volunteers had university accounts so that they didn't have to share their information with students or any of that. So we went through the process of making sure they all got set up. which I think Janet can share as well, that it's been an interesting journey. I think we've got about 25 of our volunteers currently set up on university accounts, and there's nothing quite like explaining to somebody over the phone how to download Microsoft Teams and sign in. But it's been really exciting. And then, like Janet said, we then started to look at developing new materials and utilising things like Flipgrid, Padlet, and those. A number of our volunteers wanted to share their experiences, and because we only had about 10 minutes today, what we did is we created a Padlet that allowed them to interact and share with you some of their experiences of using some of this software. So there's a little bit of introductions about me and Janet and how to contact us if you have any questions, but then we asked them to share their experience, and I think one of the ones I'll just quickly look at is this one. So this volunteer talks about when they were first asked to kind of do some of this, they thought they wouldn't be able to do it because they only had a smartphone at home, but with the support and the patience that were given by myself and Janet and lecturers, they were able to not only get onto these things but really make positive contributions. And I think that's been like a common thread for our public members about being quite anxious about technology. And I think that's not even just our public members, I think that's our staff, that's us, that's everybody. And it's been it's been a journey that we've all kind of adapted. So please, obviously in your own time a little bit, have a look at some of these examples as well. I mean, we discussed the different kinds of things that we've used. I mean, we've got volunteers in doing admissions remotely. We're using things like Padlet like this. We created an external forum for our public organisations to interact, and we've been running events all week this week about them sharing best practice with each other. I think one of our achievements is that, like Janet said, normally we're in our nice, comfortable coffee room and we're having conversations, and we didn't want to lose that. So what we did is we created a virtual drop-in every week that people could bring their cup of tea and just talk to each other. Microsoft Teams allowed them to share. We've got people sharing their baking recipes, how they're saying well. Some of our volunteers don't have access to IT, so we've been phoning them into meetings and keeping in contact over the phone. But yeah, that's a little bit more information about what we're doing and some different examples for you to read. And I think so
going forward, sorry Steve,
no,
I was just going to say, obviously it's been a learning curve for everybody, obviously, over the past few months, and we just feel better equipped now going into the future. We don't know how many more months this will continue for us, and it's looking very likely that we won't be able to bring in vulnerable members of the community into campus for the next few months. So we're going to have to keep working in this way, but also recognising that we are still leaving a proportion of our patient service user population at home. So I think our next stage will be to try and empower them by trying to ask for some equipment to be loaned out to them so that more and more people can be engaging in this way.
I think the side thing that we found as well is that we've started to be able to engage with people that we wouldn't have been able to engage with our historical model. So people that can't leave their own home or that live outside of our caption area where unfortunately we can't cover their travel expenses. We've got some new volunteers from down south now, and the aim is that even when we return, that is how they will engage. They will engage remotely. So going forward, I think we're going to attempt to do a blended approach, utilising the best of what we have, and especially interacting with our students on our other campuses, nationally and internationally if need be as well, in like Cyprus and West Lakes and where we have other campuses. So yeah, it's kind of a snapshot, I think. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Yeah, I think we've probably got time for maybe a quick question. We are running a little bit behind time, but if anyone's got something they quickly want to ask Stevie or Janet.
Could I ask a question? It's Portia here.
Yes.
The kind of drop-in sessions, is that something that you had face-to-face as well? So is it echoing reality, or is it a new thing?
No, they always happen quite naturally anyway, in terms of, so when people come in to take part in a teaching session, they would often arrive half an hour before and stay afterwards as well for a coffee and a chat. And more recently, as we've gotten busier, people in the past would just tend to drop in all the time anyway. So we've had more focused drop-in sessions recently, where they come in and they receive support and they just get to know each other a bit better. So we wanted to carry that on, and obviously we were quite concerned about some of our members anyway, in terms of keeping that social connections going, especially as a lot of them are shielding. So we wanted to make sure that they were, that they were well, that they were receiving their shopping even. You know, we provide a lot of support for our volunteers, not as social workers, but just emotional support, and just checking in on them that they're okay. So actually what we were trying to do as well is take some of the burden off ourselves and try and promote, you know, the group well-being, looking after each other.
Thank you very much, Janet and Stevie. I'm going to jump right in there while you're in full flow, and I do apologise because